Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about linguistic complexity and planning effects on word duration in Hindi read aloud speech. So my presentation is outlined into various sections. First, I'll introduce the research problem and then support it with a brief background followed by experiments, discussion, and then conclusion. So this work is motivated by long-standing debate on the cognitive processes involved in spontaneous speech and reading aloud. Both these modalities deal with language production. However, the unifying accounts are still underexplored. So reading aloud is actually articulating a text which has already been written. And from the cognitive point of view, it involves two-step process. Number one, word recognition, and number two, articulation. So the cognitive mechanism in reading aloud processes actually involves both comprehension as well as the production. So based on these ideas, we investigate various theoretically motivated hypotheses on Hindi language. So our first hypothesis is high values of linguistic complexity measures lead to high word duration. We compute linguistic complexity in terms of predictability-based features and memory-based features. We also investigate high frequency of words are read aloud faster than low frequency words. And the third one is high values of forward lexical surprisal tend to induce high word duration. We further inquire, can forward surprisal capture production planning when reading aloud? And we find that yes, it potentially captures the planning processes in reading aloud. We also investigate how do the lexical classes, namely content and function words, get accessed during reading aloud processes. We found that unlike a spontaneous speech, there is symmetric behavior towards these classes of words in reading aloud processes. And we argue that in reading aloud processes, maybe lexical access of items, to the extent of full semantic representation may not be necessary. And the motivation behind these ideas and thoughts comes from the work by Coulthard and colleagues, where they investigated how a word is read aloud. And they found that highly frequent words tend to be read aloud faster than rare or infrequent word. And this is one of the motivation for the one of the hypotheses that we investigate. So this work investigate for the isolated words, but we extend their predictions for the entire sentence in the current work. So DRC is a dual root model, and so which involves two root. One is a sublexical root and another is a lexical root. And within the model, the information processing happens in cascaded fashion. And so basically, it consists of two roots, as I said. The first one is grapheme to phoneme rule path. The other one is a lexical path, where it involves either a semantic information or it doesn't involve a semantic representation. And here the idea is that in order to generate the utterances or the pronunciation of a word, various representational level of a word, such as orthography or visual feature or letter, would interact with each other to generate the word pronunciation. So the other work in the literature is based on the work by Bell and colleagues, where they investigated the role of frequency and predictability on the duration of content and function words in conversational English. And they show that in presence of low-level predictors such as word length and word frequency, the following bigram probability predicts both function as well as the content word duration. But the previous bigram probability predicts only the function word duration. So they associate this asymmetric behavior of the predictability of these classes of words as something like there's different mechanism for the lexical access for these two classes of words apart from their grammatical functional properties. So in this work, we hypothesize that parafoveal previewing facilitates articulatory planning strategies as quantified by the contextual predictor. So in comprehension, this parafoveal previewing is well studied phenomena, but in production, in the current context, reading aloud processes, we argue that the lexical features of the upcoming words should help to activate the phonological lexicons of the current word well in advance. That will help to articulate the current word more effectively. And we investigate all these hypotheses and ideas on Hindi language, which is a verb funnel language, which exhibits a degree of word order freedom and has a very rich case marking system. And Hindi writing system follows a Devanagari alpha syllabary based on Brahmini script, and as a part of work by Vaid and Gupta 2002, where they showed that in Hindi there is significant correspondence between a letter and sound in Hindi, except for few cases such as vowel diacritics and ligatures, where there is some kind of irregularities between the way the word is written and the way the word is spoken. So maybe these irregularities might affect the reading aloud processing difficulty that we aim or aspire to capture in the current work. So now I'll briefly discuss the two influential cognitive theories to support our existing research questions. The first one is dependency locality theory, which is a theory of sentence comprehension, and it proposes two processing costs. The first one is storage cost, and the second one is integration cost, based on the limited working memory constraint with humans. And the argument is that higher the cost, the storage cost and integration cost, the harder the sentence to process and comprehend. And that's what is also reflected in the reading time. Similarly, surprisal has been proposed as a measure of comprehension difficulty, and it suggests that comprehenders construct probabilistic knowledge based on previously encountered structures, and mathematically it can be computed as negative log probability of the target word given the context. So higher the surprisal, higher the reading time, and accordingly higher the comprehension difficulty. The rationale behind using these two cognitive metrics in the current work is that these comprehension measures have been used to also model production difficulty. So now I'll describe the experiments that we did in order to investigate various hypotheses stated at the outset. So for this, we use we use publicly available human annotated Hindi read aloud speech corpus, which comprises of two speakers where they read around 1500 sentences, which comes to be around 15,000 words. And we extracted the word durations using Pratt software package. And the goal is to predict these word durations using various other cognitive predictors, as I'll discuss in subsequent slides. The first predictor is word length, which is we compute as the total number of vowels and consonants present in each word. We estimate the word frequency. We also estimate the unigram surprisal, and these low-level predictors are well known to account for the comprehension difficulty. And we also estimate lexical surprisal. For this, we use a sequence-based trigram language model, and we estimate first the forward trigram surprisal, which is like estimating the probability of the word, bringing in the upcoming context, the following context in the parafoveal region, and we compute backward trigram surprisal by bringing in the preceding context in order to calculate the predictability of the current word. We also estimate the syntactic surprisal using a PCFG based language model, where we bring in context as a syntactic tree. And then we also estimate dependency length, where we operationalize dependency length in terms of storage cost and the integration cost. Storage cost is more like the number of incomplete syntactic dependencies at the word, and integration cost is the number of intervening words between head and the dependent, which is reflected on the integration side. So now, having estimated all the independent variables, we set up a mixed effect linear regression model to predict the word duration. So here we also control for the random effects such as speakers and parts of the speech tags. And now we investigate these various hypotheses that we stated at the outset. And here is the regression result in order to predict the reading time or the word durations. And here the results are almost all in expected direction, and the regression coefficients are significant. So except for the integration cost, all the signs of the regression coefficient are in expected direction. So the first one is the regression coefficient of unigram surprisal or word frequency, which says that high frequency words are read aloud faster as compared to low frequency words. And similarly, the success of this the surprisal measures kind of quantify the predictability, the contextual predictability effects in the reading aloud processes. And similarly, the memory-based constraints as captured by the storage cost. So this is what I summarize here. So the regression coefficient of word frequency says that words which are highly frequent tend to be articulated faster as compared to low frequency words. And then the success of surprisal measures confirms the predictability effects in the reading aloud processes. And finally, the negative regression coefficient, the anomaly regression, the anomaly result has also been reported in comprehension literature. So Demberg and Keller report for English, Hussain et al. Reports for Hindi, for this particular metric. So this particular example illustrates the efficacy of forward trigram surprisal. So here is the two sentences from our corpus, and here the forward surprisal models the fact that if the upcoming context is kind of predictable, then the surprisal of the word gets low, and that's what is also reflected in the reading time of this particular word. So the region of interest here is Vidyalaya, and then Vidyalaya se Ana is more probable and more frequent in the training corpus as compared to Vidyalaya se Lana or Lene, and that's what is also reflected in the reading time of this particular word Vidyalaya. The second question is, what is the effect of word length on the efficacy of forward surprising predicting word length? So here the rationale is that if forward surprisal is driven by parafoveal proving, then the length of the target word will have its own role. So if this word is very long, then less information will be available in the parafoveal region, and then the predictability effects will be hampered. And so in order to investigate this, we check the interaction effect of word length with the surprisal, and then results are indeed in the expected direction. So regression coefficient comes out to be negative for both forward as well as backward. So we argue that the efficacy of this contextual predictability on word durations decreases with every unit increase in the target word's length. Now our next question is, how do lexical classes, namely content and function words, get access during reading aloud processes? So here what we do is the word class is like the function word and the content word. So we investigate the interaction of the surprisal measures with the word class, and here the regression results. So here what we find is that, so it's the same model, just that the current slide just showcase or display the results pertaining to the interaction effect. So here the regression coefficients are significant, and the sign of the regression coefficient suggests that both forward and backward behave very similarly to the word class. And PC of the surprisal has very anomaly behavior, so regression coefficient comes out to be negative and significant. So this says that higher the PC of the surprisal, there are certain function words which are which have a low word duration. So what we did is that we went deep with the data, and we found that indeed there are two classes of function words, such as particle and questions, which are short words, but then they involve complex mental lexical operations such as movement or linking in the sentence. So these complex operations might incorporate might kind of suggest that there is some kind of spillover effects. So that's what we exactly find. So the current word, if it's a particle, even though the surprisal, so the surprisal of this word is high, but the reading time of this particular word is low because it's a short word. But then we see that the next word on an average has a very high word duration, and that's what we also see for the question word. So this particular experiment is quite interesting in the sense that we find spillover effects in production as akin to what you see in comprehension studies. So we validate the findings of DRC prediction, where reading aloud is faster for high frequency words than the low frequency words. And literature people have argued that these high frequent words require less evidence from the visual input owing to lower activation, and then highly frequent words involve less effort towards lexical search procedures in our mental lexicon. And the other finding that we report here in this work is that for reading aloud processes, full semantic representations of word may not be required for content and functional classification. So this is also consistent with the architecture and and what DRC would predict. So there are two routes: grapheme to phoneme route and non-semantic route, which would be more prevalent for lexical access. However, there are a couple of works in the literature which says that the semantic route becomes important when you read non-word or when you read inconsistent pronunciation. So more work is required to investigate some of these findings in Hindi. And reading aloud processes involves both comprehension as well as production. So there is a need of an integrated model of comprehension production to account for reading aloud processes. So just to conclude, we find that high values of linguistic complexity measures lead to high word duration. Frequent words are read aloud faster than non-frequent words. And forward surprisal is driven by parafoveal proving, where it captures some aspects of production planning. And contrary to what has been shown for spontaneous speech, maybe for reading aloud processes, we would not require full semantic representations of word. And as a part of future work, we would want to investigate or test these findings on larger data sets involving more Hindi speaker. Currently, we just have 2 speakers. And we would want to have a controlled setup, and we also want to put in comprehension questions just to kind of probe that participants or the speakers are not reading this and just mechanically. And in order to have our model investigate the integrated aspect of comprehension production, we would want to go ahead with the multimodal data collection. So something like you bring in eye tracker as well as reading aloud paradigm to investigate or tease apart how comprehension products are interacting. Thank you.